This is Energy Superheroes with Peter Perry, and we have Johanna Godinez. She is the personal assistant for life. That's her self proclaimed title. But hopefully, we're going to learn what that means today. She's calling today from Puerto Rico. She is an MBA, and she's learned how to apply the deep truths of the universe to business. I know that finance people like myself and entrepreneurs are pretty controlling. So today, Johanna is going to help us to learn to let go a little bit and go with the flow. And hopefully, that's going to also make us more successful in what we do. And there's a lot of different measures of success, money being one of them that we all like, but we're hopefully going to learn about some of the other measures of success today. Johanna, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Peter. And yeah, definitely. We have to learn that there are a lot of different ways to look at success. There is no one definition of success. And I think that should be the first thing, whether we're going to go work for someone, whether we're going to get into business, whether we're going to get into a relationship, is we need to define who we are and what that means to us, right? Because I need to understand what success means if I'm going to go out there and go get it. So it's right now, or we're waking up more to the fact that society doesn't necessarily have to dictate how that looks for us, right? To me, being a millionaire but not being able to use my time wouldn't be success, no matter how much money I had. Because if I wasn't able to use my time is worth so much more than any money in the world, because money is unlimited. My time, very finite. And I don't know how much I have ever. So I tend to use it very wisely, or as wisely as I can.
And no, absolutely. That's such the balancing act, right? We all only have 24 hours in a day. We've got the same amount of time. And I know in finance anyway, that the time demands are huge. Amount of time you spend in analysis, working on deals. It just, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And so how do you find that balance? How are you able to give what you need to give to your clients and also have the balance that you need to give to yourself?
I'm very organized and I create very strict boundaries. That would be the two things. Like I make sure that if I give myself a task, I complete it and I complete it by the time that I give myself. And when I say that I'm going to take some time off for myself, I take that time off for myself. And I don't care if I didn't get something done that I needed to get done somewhere else, because we stop being productive and actually start making mistakes to the point where we are completely the opposite of being productive. So it's really important to at the very least understand how to organize ourselves, organize our time, and really get into what is it that we like to do, what is it that we want to do, so that we also use our off time wisely, right? And so that we do get around to the things that help us fill our cup and make us feel more connected and more alive. Let me move a little bit because my dog's just knocked out my light.
Oh, that's great. And you're out in a jungle today. Where exactly are you in the world?
I'm in Puerto Rico. I'm a firm believer, again, that success is something that we decide for ourselves. And I have been working on my idea of success for the past 15 years. I'm designing and building right now in the middle of construction a yoga center here in Puerto Rico where people can come and disconnect and get back to nature. It's incredible. Like, this is my house. It isn't really a business. My business is my business, but it's incredible how much people just need time to just be in nature. And I'm very lucky. I have 3 acres here that are all surrounded by a beautiful lake. I don't have neighbors, and I have a space and a peace of mind that I can share. So most of my retreats and my teacher trainings, I own a yoga school. So although I am an MBA, I found that my passion and my purpose in life was to educate people on what yoga actually is and how we can implement it to become not just better people, but more successful people, more honorable people that are going to be authentic and that are going to really stand behind their word and show up certain ways. And yoga gives you a whole plethora of tools that can be used to become that person. And yeah, so it's a beautiful combination of following my passion and being able to make my passion my business and the long, very long journey that has taken. But when you give up control and you start to just notice the opportunities that present themselves instead of always wanting to create those opportunities for yourself, you oftentimes get steered by whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, intuition, your higher self, into a path that serves you much more in your ultimate vision of what you're trying to create in life. Of course, if you know what that is. If you don't know what that is, you're kind of rolling along with the punches in life. And I'm sorry because it sucks because then everything's a surprise and it's hard to not be a victim of life when you live that way. It's really important to know the power that we have in this experience. I call it a game. In this game of life, you can either think that everything is exactly as it seems and you're just rolling along, or you can question things at a higher level and say, how much can I really mess with this game? And what can I do? What is my potential in this universe? And it's a very different way of looking at the world. But when you're only looking at money and only looking at success in terms of something material and something you're creating outside of yourself, you don't get to ask yourself those questions and you don't take the time. That doesn't really matter because you're grinding and you're being successful at making money and showing others how amazing you are, which is great. And if that fulfills you, that's awesome. Amazing. Just please use it and pass it on to elevate others. But if you have that and you're somehow not quite fulfilled inside, it's just recognize that none of that will ever really bring you internal fulfillment. It's finding your why. Why am I doing this? Why do I get up every morning? Is it for a paycheck? Because if it is, cool, but you're missing out on the whole magic of life because you're looking at something that's completely not even real. It's just like a designed way for you to be able to somehow maintain yourself in this life, but you're missing all of the magic. But when you wake up and you know your why, you're in the magic, you're creating the magic, you're living the magic. And yoga showed me all that. I didn't really understand. And I didn't learn that in school. Let's put it this way. I'm just really lucky that my mom was really into go to school, blah, blah, blah. And my dad was the D student entrepreneur. So I had that PhD student entrepreneur dichotomy that really led me to being able to see the world from. I do understand the power of education, but I also know that I can do what I want. And I want to do that.
And no, very cool. It's funny how some of the coolest people come from this two dichotomy type family with different moms and dads. A lot of times when the mom and the dad are really the same, first it could be a little boring, a little stuffy. But when you've got two completely different, I think maybe it's that polarity, right? That probably attracted them to each other, but then creates very interesting people. I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. But you did your MBA first, or did you already know this stuff and then went into MBA school already thinking about things this way?
So here's the story, right? Everyone has the story.
Have the
So this
eureka moment.
story. So I had a business. Okay, so let me go back a little bit. College, I raced cars while I was studying to get my bachelor's degree. And I was going to be a race car driver. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to be a race car driver. I'm a woman, I'm Hispanic. Come on. Like, I'm pretty and I can drive fast and I can do a lot. Right. So I was like, I have everything going for me. So I started a racing school in 2005 to help pay for my racing career and help me staying in the loop in the racing world because I was training people that were coming up in the ranks. So my name would stay in people's mouths. But I realized that I didn't understand enough as a business owner to really take my business like to the next level. Like really it was still a hobby. Like I was making money, but only on weekends. And I would make a lot of money some weekends and barely any money other weekends because if they would crash or anything, then all everything I made would go into fixing the go-karts, right? And these are 90-mile-an-hour go-karts. So when you crash hard, you don't crash, oh, I knocked the guy out. You potentially bend an axle or break a rim. So it's expensive to crash. And
Liability's got to be crazy with that business.
Yeah, well, I had the people and everyone at the go-kart track loved me. So the tracks that I raced at, I just paid them a small fee and I would be covered under their liability. It was
Man,
the
that sounds like
perfect.
a lot of fun.
It was amazing. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. But when I got my MBA, I realized that I needed different skills to be able to really take that business to a different level. So I moved to North Carolina to get an MBA because, of course, North Carolina, racing capital USA. I knew I would be able to race anything I wanted there. And I knew I could stay within that industry. And while I was there, I finished my MBA and I finished December 2007. When I got out of school, the economy was not doing well. The racetracks were not doing well. So they weren't, two of them had closed. One of them was barely supporting themselves and their clubs had gotten so small that it wasn't really worth it for me to have that business anymore. And I hadn't ever thought about working for someone. So not my dad had sold his business in September. So I couldn't go back and be like, "Hey dad, I'm going to run the hotel," because he sold the hotel, so no family business anymore. So I was in a point in my life where like I had the most knowledge, the most experience, the most eagerness to be out there doing something. And I had no way of getting a job. The economy had gone to crap. I kept going interview after interview, and I went through a terrible depression. And back then, I didn't understand what your mind does to you. And I didn't understand that you are not your thoughts. And I didn't understand that you're not a victim of your circumstances. And I just didn't see life the way that I see it now. So I went to a psychologist and they sent me to a psychiatrist again on antidepressants. And I kept telling them, I don't have depression in a chemical sense. I want to do something. I want to work. I want to move. I don't want to just sit home. I need to feel like I'm worth something, like I'm creating something. It's always been very important to me. And they told me to go work out so I could get my own endorphins picked up. And I didn't know what that meant because although I had been in sports, I had never stepped one foot in a gym in my whole life. So I was like, okay, so what do people do when they want to go work out? They go to these camps, right? Where you lose weight and learn fitness. So I found a place called the Hilton Head Health Institute, and that's where I found yoga. I found yoga and I learned about food and how it works in our bodies and how nobody is taught how muscles work or how strength training or cardio works. And I was like, "Oh my God, why isn't anybody taught this?" And I got out of there and I was like, "I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna teach people this." So I
No, it's an
started my own
amazing
business.
story. It's I played high school and college football, so I just took for granted that everybody knew about fitness. But then when you get out into the real world, you realize like people really don't know. And thank God that your psychiatrist recommended that because people get on the medication and there's no way out for them. I think that's a huge issue in the business community. I know in finance, in the world of finance, particularly, people go through ups and downs. And a lot of people use artificial substances, let's say, to keep themselves at the pace they need to be on. And of course, fitness is the best way to go about it. And I think anybody can go through that journey where they,
Fitness and mushrooms.
uh,
Gotta tell you, it's
all
fitness
right.
and mushrooms.
So I do follow Mike Cernovich a little bit online and he recommends mushrooms, as does Joe Rogan. So you'll have to tell me what kind of mushrooms you're talking about.
I'm talking about the legal kind of 100%, guys. You have things like lion's mane, cordyceps, and things that are out there that have been known to have amazing impact in the human psyche, the human brain. Some of them have more antioxidants than any other fruits and vegetables. So it's important to understand that, like, we are a byproduct of what we eat. Like you are what you eat. Like people don't just say that to mess around. You really are what you eat. Your food literally shows the fabric of what you are. So it's really important to understand how the things in our bodies are affecting us. And I'm not saying don't ever drink, don't ever smoke, don't ever whatever. Like I'm big on moderation. I'm vegetarian, but I call myself flexitarian because if I go to your house and you don't know I'm vegetarian and you went to Alaska and hunted a moose and saved the loin just for me, I can promise you I'm going to eat that loin. And I'm going to eat it with my whole heart because I know how much good energy you put into that. Like, we really need to again come back to who we are, to how we operate as people, and to how we use the tools that we have in nature, not that were created by man, like Adderall and cocaine and whatever else is out there, because the problem is that's not sustainable. And in terms of your actual energy, which we call prana, those things are murder to your actual energy, to what connects you to being human, to being a part of this world. And I need a second because otherwise my computer is going to die, whatever my dog did. So me, yo necesito un favor que los perros se metieron al y me quitaron esto de los demás y se me va a morir la computadora y después en medio de un podcast. Tú me lo puedes y vea dónde se va a meter. So the more we start to get to know who we are and we connect to who we are, then we can start to not have to use those things because we start to learn what things serve us, what things don't serve us, and start is what we eat, what we listen to, what we say to other people, what we give permission to other people to do to us. And when it comes to our business, if you only think of yourself as successful because of what you're accomplishing or not accomplishing, unfortunately, you are identifying yourself completely with things that are outside of yourself. Thank you. So that's really important for us to recognize. And again, it starts with us knowing who we are. What does that even mean? What does it mean to know who you are?
It's a
So,
great question.
yeah.
How do you do that?
So, you know how sometimes you're having a conversation in your mind, and then all of a sudden you catch yourself just watching this conversation happening? And you're like, what in the world is going on in there? The thing that catches that conversation, that metaphorical observer of what's going on to the human, that's not necessarily the physical human. That's more who you are than the human will ever be. The human is the avatar to that thing that can observe the experience that the human is having. And we become completely identified with the avatar to the point where I look at some of these women and what they're doing to themselves. And I'm like, how? How can you think that looks good? How can you think that is somehow making you worth more as a person? Like, how can that actually be what gives you the worth that you need to get up in the morning and move forward? And because if that is the case, we need to really start digging deep and looking at what is it that's making us not even be able to just be ourselves, anything about ourselves. Yeah, I know I went on a tangent there, but
No, that's really good. And so I wish I could remember this person's name, but a number of years ago, Oprah, she had a guy on a lot that talked about the observer. And I don't know who that is, but we'll have to reference it in the show notes. The guy wrote a bunch of books about that very phenomenon that you're talking
I don't know how many do you want? Deepak Chopra is one of them. You have Sadhguru, he's another one of them. Anyone who's a non-dualist is one of them. The non-dualist thinks that you're not even a thing. The brain thinks it's a thing, and the brain's always telling you it's a thing, but literally this is all just happening. And the brain is just having conversations about it, making you think that you somehow have control of what's happening. So a lot of people think a lot of different things. But what I have seen through experience is that I can connect to that observer. And when I connect to that observer, I don't get so identified with the things that are happening to the human, with what I think other people are thinking, to what I think I said that I should have said a different way, to a deal that I may or may not have messed up, to the thing that I didn't turn in on time, to the things about my body that I don't like. It's you start to recognize it's all about what you're telling yourself, and that's what makes your reality. So you start watching what is it that I'm always telling myself? And becoming that observer changes the game 100%. Because guess what? When you're at a business meeting You have $1 worth of attention. And this comes from a racing book called Inner Speed Secrets. You have $1 worth of attention. If that attention is in your own thoughts about what you think is happening in this meeting, you are not feeling the other person's energy, reading the other person's body language, seeing what's not being said in between the lines, because you're in your own thoughts regarding the conversation that you're having. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as anyone who's having any type of relationships with another person, being able to be in the present moment allows you to notice all those things and capitalize on it. Because if you notice that you're saying something and the other person's energy is shifting in some way, you know that whatever you're saying or the way that you're saying it isn't landing right. Oh, but you only notice that if you're aware of exactly what's happening in this moment, not if you're already thinking about something else. So again, yoga, these tools of meditation, what is meditation? Meditation is to connect to that observer to the point where you are noticing your thoughts so much that you connect to the space between the thoughts and start to have less time of just that's going on in the mind all the time so that you can just be and enjoy something for what it is without having to judge anything.
So it's so true, so amazing. The book's called Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I just
Eckhart
remembered,
Tolle.
right? I read that a number of years ago and it actually did have an effect. I recommend it. But for those that aren't going to read a book like that, is there a trick or a shortcut? Everybody wants something quick. How can you get, when you go to meditate, how can you actually connect to that observer and get, let's say, better at meditation or be able to do it without the constant flow that you're talking about running through the head?
Let's understand why there is no shortcut to this. Let's understand it at a scientific neurological level. You are X number of years, and for X number of years, you had one conversation that started and now is like a thing that's always repeating in your mind and that you're always talking about, right? That thought started as a person walking through a jungle. But then it was a person riding a horse through a little trail. And then it was a horse and a buggy through a little road. And then it was a car through a paved road. And then it was a very fast car through a 5-lane highway. That is how your neurons work. That thought happens once, no problem. You don't connect to it, you don't attach to it, it's out. It dies. The connection doesn't actually start to fire again and again. But the second you get into it, which is again why depression, this is what I learned how my depression was unfolding itself, right? When you start identifying yourself with the thoughts as somehow being a part of your experience and a part of what is happening and a part of you, it starts just becoming a habit. That thought pattern is just a habit. You don't change a habit overnight. There are no shortcuts to changing a habit. Can certain things work? Yeah. And psilocybin is one of them. You can microdose. You can go on an ayahuasca trip. I've done all of it. I can promise you if there's something out there to be experienced, I've experienced it because I am all about experiencing whatever this world has to offer. I will not judge it until I experience it.
No
So
judgment.
I've
That's
had
one of those things that it's not very easy to do. You have to figure it out and jump through a bunch of hoops to do it. So I think it'd be nice if one day it's a little easier, let's say.
It will be. There's ways and there's ways. Like the spores are not illegal. So you can learn how to use the spores and you can find the spores because they're not illegal. So you can do it for yourself. It's just how bad do you want something? Because that's not a shortcut either. Because you need to be disciplined with it. So it's like everything else. How bad do you want it? Do you want to be healthy? How much? Can you stop eating meat because you know it's messing with you? Or can you stop eating gluten because you know it's inflaming you? Or can you stop drinking alcohol because you know that like next day and for 3 days after your brain is messed up? Like it's how bad do you want it? And the thing right now is we are so into those quick fixes and those that I don't want it bad enough for myself to put the work in, but because I'm doing it for everything else, I don't mind taking the shortcut and seeing whatever happens after that.
And no,
And
absolutely. Great point. And I'll give on the alcohol tip. I'll tell you, somebody should get a fitness tracker and watch exactly what you're talking about. It does affect you 3 days. Actually, the beats in between your heart, the time space in between heart rate variability gets messed up for 3 days after drinking. It's an unbelievable factor. I think if more people took a fitness tracker and watch it, that's going to have a bigger impact than just about anything and opening your eyes to how much it affects you.
yeah, and the thing is this. So you if you become the observer and you start seeing all of your compulsions, does that make you feel good? So the first thing is, OMG, let me recognize how many compulsions I have that I have completely justified in my life as being perfect. And I'm not saying I don't have them, guys. I have them just as much as anybody else. I just have less of them because I've been able to keep some of them under control once I realize all of them. But as always, we're human and we're always going to have things that we default to and crutches and things. It's just how much is it what is keeping you going versus you just enjoying life and actually just being in the experience of life. And if all you're doing is just working day in and day out because you need X amount of money, live a less expensive life.
Yeah,
Just to
imagine
that
that.
night, shoot. I lived in friends' couches till the other day. And not because I had to, it's because I wanted to, because I can do whatever I want then. I can decide I'm going to go to Peru and then in 2 weeks get up and go to Peru and be there for a couple of weeks and not get paid during those weeks and be okay with it. Oh, but if I have the apartment and the car, I went to Costa Rica for 6 months, 6 whole months. Everything got paid while I was in Costa Rica and I had to pay to volunteer. Not only did I not get paid, I had to pay for them to feed me and house me while I was volunteering. If I had spent all my money on the Gucci and the boobs, I couldn't do things like volunteering to help the world and to help my community. And again, it starts to put into perspective what you're doing and why you are doing it. Because when I'm helping my community and I'm in a jungle for 6 weeks, yeah, I can put stuff on social media so that everyone knows about it, but that's not why. It's because of what you're doing. Like that, those animals can't thank you. The universe, the whole freaking thing is thanking you because you're elevating the vibration of the collective just by doing something that you want to do and that makes you happy and that
No,
you enjoy.
it's truly amazing. So, yeah, I know you said no shortcuts, but are you running any sort of retreats or anything like that down there that can get people down the path a little bit, or is everything you're doing more online?
No, I do most of this stuff live. I do some stuff online, like April 12th. If you guys want to hear a little more about it, I have a free webinar. Just find me on Instagram at bay_lifestyle PR. Go on the bio. There's a link there. You can sign up for free and spend an hour and a half just listening. But what I do is I have intensive retreats. Can be short, sometimes just 4 or 5 days. The next one is in Ecuador in May. Then we're going to Bali in September. But then I also do teacher training retreats where people think they have to become teachers. Only 10% of my students have become teachers because most people take my training because they're like, Johanna, you talk about yoga and something so different. I really want to learn what this is because it intrigues me. And the it's been proven that the best way to learn is by teaching others. So in teacher training, even if you don't want to teach as a teacher in the future, you're still going to be teaching the first day that you're there because the goal is for you to learn things well enough to be able to, just like I'm doing right now, go out there and explain why you're incorporating them to somebody else, even if you're not teaching them about it. Because you got to teach yourself first, really.
You got to
And yeah,
tell me,
and those
where's the retreat in Ecuador going to be?
Ecuador is in Sierra Elizos is in Mejia, Ecuador. It's in the mountains in between 7 volcanoes. 90 acres. It's chilly. It's like in the 50s, but they're letting me do something which I've never done before and I'm really excited about. I asked them if I could just invite the community for a day. I was like, would you be open to just telling everyone to just come out? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, cool. So we're doing a day to honor Mother Earth. And every single activity is going to connect us to Earth. So we're doing bird watching, we're doing planting things in the ground and picking some of the food that we'll be eating. We'll be doing hiking, but then we'll take off our shoes and we'll do a meditation where you'll ground, but you'll feel nature with all your senses. Then we'll have a cacao ceremony while they're making us dinner, and we'll have a yoga class and we'll have dinner afterwards. And every single person in the community is invited to just share that day with us and just honor
That
Mother
sounds
Nature.
amazing. My fiance is actually from Ecuador. I was just down in Cuenca, which is her town, not that long ago.
So cool. Yeah,
So
I'm so excited. It's the first time doing something that connected to nature, and I'm just sharing that experience with people is so powerful. It makes my eyes water because it's just so beautiful. People need to connect back to nature. It's so healing. It's so yummy. Like sometimes we spend so many hours in an office and we think that that's life, these four walls. And when you're outside and you watch animals and they're just normal everyday life, like you realize like nothing's like us. We have self-imposed this rushed material, external, always trying to compete with each other instead of collaborating world that isn't even real. And we're somehow submitting each other to it. And not my community, anyways. Like I'm changing that, and everyone around me is working to change that because we realize, for example, I had a woman today who's using the space to do a goddess circle. And she said, do you mind if I come to your events and I sell my stuff? And I was like, no, I'm like, but you got to give me 10% of what you sell. That's the only thing. Cause I won't pay you ahead of time to be here. I'll make money only if you make money, and you can stay and you can be a part of the event anyways. And she was like, deal. And I was like, and if you ever need anyone doing anything, and she's, oh, you're doing a cacao ceremony already at the retreat. And I was like, cool. So why? Because what I'm doing doesn't take away from her painting people's goddess embodiment, like, which is what she does. She can see you and she can feel the goddess in you, and she can put it on a piece of paper to the point where she's next to you and you're closing your eyes. When you open your eyes, it's usually a lot of what you were imagining in your mind.
unbelievable. So this is it. I can say that probably of the listeners to our podcast, they've never heard some of this stuff before, which I think is pretty amazing. So I do believe you're going to open a lot of people's eyes. We'll definitely link to your website and your Instagram in the show notes. And people in finance and entrepreneurs need this kind of break. And I'll say that the finance people are usually the worst offenders because the entrepreneurs tend to have that real creative side that are a lot of them are have done this kind of thing before. But finance, not so much. It's a much more linear discipline. But I think you can learn a lot, especially a lot of what we write about in is deal making. And deal making in the end is about relationships. It's about being intuitive to both sides of the deal and understanding what each person is feeling in wanting to move forward or not move forward. And so empathy, I think, is probably the number one skill set of a deal maker. And you can really only cultivate it by these kind of relational being in touch with the universe principles. So I think people can really benefit from this kind of experience.
All right, here's the deal, Peter. If you want, we'll start a mastermind and we'll help people implement these things to help them in deal making. Because I can promise you, at any time that you're more connected with how you manifest and what that means and how to do it and what that means, you'll be a better deal maker because you will understand which deals are even good for you. Because let's be honest, when we're also in that space, we forget that not every deal is meant for us and it's going to serve us the way that we think it is. And sometimes we get the red flags, but because we're so focused on getting the deal, we go through it anyways. And then it bites us in the ass.
It's
So
very
just
true.
yeah, so just being more in tune to that as well. And to your gut instinct, how many times have you not listened to your gut and gone through with something that 5 years later is still biting you in the butt? I know, I can promise you I have. My company started in 2017, and everything told me that the person that I was getting into it with was probably not the right person. But he had what I needed. He had the back end, I had the front end. It was a partnership made in heaven. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of having to change my name and it's not always what it seems. So it's important for us to follow our intuition and to also know that the things that are meant for us, we're easily going to find them because they're already ours. And it's shifting your mindset into what that, again, what does that even mean?
Absolutely. There's a term in our business called deal flow, and everybody's chasing it. More and more deals come across your desk. But I'll say that more important than that is really deal selection because we see so many deals now. It's like it's say no to 90% of it and picking the right ones because you can only work on three or four at a time. So I think having that intuition is huge. You really don't know when you first look at it. You have to go with the combination of the numbers, but also the people matter more than the numbers most of the.
Absolutely. If you're surrounded by people all day that you knew from the beginning that you didn't really want to be dealing with, what kind of attitude are you going to come home with? Because
Absolutely.
everything is related. And you know, you can't just leave your work at home or at work and go home. No, it doesn't work like that. You can't just take off the suit and literally take off the suit.
It would
It's
be
still
so
in your mind.
nice if that was possible. It's very difficult. I spent some years bartending, and the greatest thing about that job is when you stop, you leave it at work. You're not thinking about it anymore. When you're in a corporate job, that work is in your brain 24/7. I don't care who you are.
But again, it's also understanding then what things are in my mind so much that are affecting that long term part of it. And then working backwards, what really can I do to start setting? Because sometimes there are tools that can be implemented. We just aren't thinking about it that way.
I
Because
think that by itself would change people's lives. If you could just show people how to draw that line where they're not taking the work in their head with them when they leave work, that would be very valuable.
cool. Like I said, my offer stands. If you want to do a mastermind, I am mastermind certified by Greg Reed and the Mastermind Association under Napoleon Hill Foundation. So that I'm a huge Napoleon Hill. Like we're on the same thread. That man and I somehow I'm connected to him, and I don't know how this stuff works, but I can promise you, I manifested a lot based on what Napoleon Hill taught me, not with his books but with what he would say. I would always listen to him. I did read the 17 principles, but the most impactful things were the audios that are on Apple and stuff, his old audio, where he was a spiritual man beyond his time. And he's seen as this businessman, but listen to him as a person and what he said. He is very spiritual and he knew how to manifest and he knew how to use all of that to his power. It's good to be open to any tools that can help us in our craft. And sometimes they're not really what we think they are.
No, no doubt. This has been awesome, Johanna. Really cool having you on.
Yeah.
We'll link to all the stuff we talked about in the show notes. Napoleon Hill is a great one. Didn't he do something where his kid was born with ears, but then he was able to learn how to hear? Or some crazy story like that.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's that I'm pretty sure that I'm thinking of the right guy because didn't he write Think and Grow Rich? Yeah, so if in there, he's talking about how his son was actually born physically without ears, and they said he would never be able to hear, but he was able to develop the capability because Napoleon Hill was so focused on teaching him how to hear that he was able to do it.
Our brains are incredible. I went through this traumatic thing and my right side of my body started to atrophy. The muscles just stopped talking to my brain. And I couldn't even hold a cell phone like this. I couldn't tell my hand to close around something. And I was training for American Ninja Warriors. So I was about as strong as I had ever been and just woke up one day and couldn't lift the thing. And all the doctors was, oh, you'll never do yoga again. You'll never do this again. You'll never do that again. And I was like, listen, guys, I'm like, you don't know what I know. And what I know is that my body will do what I tell my body to do. So are you going to help me tell my body what to do? Or are you going to try to convince me that somehow me and my body don't know what we got to do? Because otherwise I'm out. And even the physical therapist was like, I don't really know what to do. But I would tell my body if one side can do it, the other side can do it. And I would help it with my other hand. And no, I couldn't do yoga at the beginning, but that was in 2017. And I can walk on my hands now. And they told me I would never even do a down dog or a push up. And I can walk on my hands. So it's about what do you believe and how much are you willing to do to get and become what you believe. But first, figure that out. Got to figure out who you are to be able to get there.
Truly amazing. So I think we're going to end on that because I think that's the note that we want people leaving with. You got to know who you are to be able to get there. I think that's awesome. Johanna, it's been really a pleasure having you on. Johanna Godinez, calling in from Puerto Rico, and she's got an amazing story and also can help people in a big way figure out who they are and be able to see that observer and have empathy and all the things that you need to be successful, not just in business, but really in life and have that peace that really money can't buy. Johanna, thanks for being on.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. Have a good one. Thanks,
You
everyone.
too. All right.